Okay, let's talk about software license audits. And I know what you're thinking sounds super boring, right? But what if I told you it's actually this high-stakes game, a strategic battle that's happening right now inside the biggest companies in the world, and there are billions with a B on the line. So let's break down exactly how this game is played. First things first, you gotta understand the stakes. Take a look at this number. $15 billion. That's how much money software vendors are clawing back from their own customers every single year. And no, that's not a typo. We're talking about a huge, kind of hidden economy humming away inside the tech industry. So, how are they doing it, right? Well, that's what this is all about. It's this whole game. A carefully managed, totally legal, and insanely profitable game of software license audits. And look, it's a game you really need to know the rules to because, trust me, sooner or later, you're going to get an invitation to play. All right, so if you want to win any game, you have to know the rules, right? You need to know the players, the board, the whole setup. So let's dive in and set the stage. So what even is a software license audit? At its heart, it's pretty simple. It's just a formal checkup. The company that sold you the software is just checking in to make sure you're playing by the rules you agreed to. It's really their number one way to enforce the contract.
Okay, here's a really important point that a lot of people get wrong. You might think your company owns all that software it uses, but you don't. Nope. What you actually own is a license. And a license is basically just permission, the right to use the software, but only according to a very specific set of rules. Think of it like this. The software is the tool, but the license, that's the rule book. And that rule book is what this whole game is built on.
And where does this right to audit come from? It's not some random power grab. It's literally a clause, usually buried deep in the fine print of those super long license agreements that, let's be honest, people sign without giving it a second thought. Your company actually agreed to this. You gave them permission to check up on you. It's all right there in the contract. So you gotta ask, why do vendors go so hard on this? Well, it's not just about catching people who are pirating software. This is a core part of their business strategy. I mean, for some of the big players, these audits bring in 20 to 30% of their license revenue every year. But it's more than just the money. It's about protecting their intellectual property, making sure the contract is being followed, and, get this, they even use it to gather intel on you. They see how you're using their stuff, which helps them find new ways to sell you more. Okay, so we've got the players, we've got the rules of the game. Now, let's talk about how the hunt actually begins. What's the first move? Yeah, vendors aren't just picking companies at random. They're looking for triggers, for red flags. For example, did your company just merge with another one? Uh-oh, your chance of an audit just shot way up. Because mixing two different IT systems together is a recipe for licensing mistakes. Or maybe your company is growing like crazy, but you haven't bought any more licenses. That's another huge signal. Even something as simple as cutting back on your maintenance payments can pop you right onto their radar. And once they've targeted you, the process is pretty predictable. It usually kicks off with a formal letter. And they don't send it to the IT department. They send it straight to a top executive, to make sure it gets noticed. After that comes the official notice sent by certified mail. From that point, you've usually got about 30 days to get your act together before the kickoff meeting. And that's where the real fun begins and the battle lines are officially drawn. Okay, so this all sounds very formal, very procedural, but what are they really looking for? Once the auditors are in the door, what's the stuff that's gonna get you in trouble? What does non-compliance actually mean? And that brings us to what is, for sure, the most intense part of this entire game: trying to survive the audit itself. We're talking about navigating a total minefield of compliance rules with some very, very real financial risks on the line. Look, auditors are smart. They know exactly where to dig to find the biggest paydays. They go straight for the most complicated and expensive stuff. We're talking database systems and virtualization platforms. These things are just notorious compliance traps because their licensing rules are insanely complex, based on weird stuff like how many processor cores you have or how many virtual machines are running. And then you have the big enterprise systems, your ERPs. The rules might be a little simpler there, but if you make one mistake, the financial hit can be absolutely massive. So what kind of stuff do they actually find? Well, the most common one is simple. You just don't have enough licenses. You've installed more software than you paid for. Easy. But it gets trickier than that. A huge one is using the wrong type of license. For instance, using a cheap license meant for a developer in your live money-making production system. That's a big no-no. Or maybe you're using software outside the country you're licensed for. See, it's not just about how many licenses you have, it's all about how you're using them. And here's the kicker. The burden of proof is on you. You can't just say, hey, we're good, trust us. You have to prove it. And that means you have to cough up incredibly detailed data from all your systems showing exactly what's installed where. Then, you have to match all that data up against a paper trail of every single purchase you've ever made. We're talking contracts and receipts that could be decades old. And what happens if you can't prove it? Well, this is the number that should give any executive nightmares. $4.2 million. That's the average cost for a big company to settle an audit when they're caught out of compliance. This isn't a parking ticket. It's not a slap on the wrist. It's a major, painful financial blow.
Okay, I know. So far, this all sounds pretty terrible, right? Like you're just waiting for the inevitable. But what if you could flip the script? What if you could actually change the rules of the game? Let's get into the playbook for how you can take back control. When it comes to audits, companies really have two choices. There's the reactive path, which is basically a frantic, high-stress scramble the moment that letter arrives. And it almost always ends badly, with huge costs, massive disruption, and basically zero power to negotiate. But then there's the proactive path. This is a state of being in control all the time. It's a practice called software asset management, or SAM. And it's all about being ready for the game before it even starts.
And this right here, this is what being proactive actually looks like. Imagine, instead of that frantic scramble through old spreadsheets and dusty file cabinets, you just pull up a dashboard, a real-time view of your exact compliance status right now. That's the dream, right? That's the whole point of a good software asset management program, having that constant visibility and control.
So how do you actually get there? It's a process, and it's continuous. It's basically these 5 steps. First, you have to always know what software is running in your environment. Second, you manage all your licenses in one central place, a single source of truth. Third, you're constantly checking what you have deployed against what you're allowed to have. Fourth, you fix the little problems before they blow up into big, expensive ones. And finally, you strategically look for ways to cut out software you're not even using. Eliminate the waste. And you know what the best part is? This isn't just about playing defense. The numbers show that companies who really get this right, they end up saving 20 to 30% on their software costs just by getting rid of waste. You stop buying stuff you don't need, and you finally get a real grip on what you own. It's a win-win. And all of this leaves us with a really interesting question for the future. You know, with all this new tech like AI and blockchain that promise to make everything transparent and automated, you have to wonder, is this whole high-stakes game about to just disappear? Or are the tools on both sides of the board about to get a whole lot smarter, making the game even more intense? That's a future that's still being written.